Oh, hell no, I ain't wearing that.
Okay, so I'm going to open this video with a bit of advice to anyone else new that serves as a little jab at myself. If you've bitten off a little bit more than you can chew with, say, a piece that has taken a lot more time than you expected thanks to circumstances beyond your control, and perhaps that there's a little bit too much meat in the topic, just find a demo for a game that's currently in development that looks neat and record it. It really doesn't matter if it's indie or AAA, although indie games really can use as much support as they can at times, so you know what I'm going to prefer doing a video on. It's honestly a little bit of a win-win scenario because you get some content to make, and you get to provide them with valuable feedback towards a game they are working hard on. So yeah, that explains today's video on a demo I found randomly, and clearly liked enough to make an entire video on it. Today's game demo is Fashion Police Squad. I do, however, feel the need to go into my history with the FPS genre as a whole and explain what I look for when deciding what sorts of these FPS games that, appeal to me when it comes to making a video like this. And some of you aren't really here for that and really couldn't care about that, and that's fine. I will provide a timestamp on both the screen and in the video description so you can skip this portion if you wish. Now, as for the rest of you, see, I didn't have a PC for a long time growing up, and console-wise, the big thing at the time was the military shooter craze. A subgenre that I consider to be absolutely horrible. However, as far as I'm aware, they're somehow America's premier babysitting service. And when I got around to trying Doom, one of the most revolutionary FPS games ever, I wound up not knowing about source ports and tried running it in DOS. Not gonna lie, it felt so horribly clunky to me running a DOS box that it kind of soured the whole experience to me and turned me off of the FPS genre as a whole. Turns out, big mistake on my part, because with a group and company known as New Blood putting out a little game named Dusk, the whole retro FPS revival happened. And you know what? I decided to give it another chance. And you know what else? I found a lot of good games. At this present moment, right now, I've gone through a lot of these games. Doom 2, Plutonia, Dust, a Medieval, Ultra Kill. Heck, I even enjoy the modern Doom games. And that's just in the realm of primarily single-player experiences. There's quite a few multiplayer-focused FPS experiences I enjoy as well, such as potential future video subjects, Unfortunate Spacemen, and Team Fortress 2. And even then, there's even more because a lot of the old id Tech and build games have modding scenes that are super duper dedicated that we can't get into today. But the thing that ties these games together, no matter how tonally different they are, is that they're all really, really over the top. Sometimes bloody, gory, and or edgy, and sometimes extremely silly like today's game. Or option 3, which is a little of column A and a little of column B. Now, I don't intend to make retro and throwback first-person shooters my thing. I'm a professor, not a prison lad. Hashtag free civvy. But this is a genre and subgenre that I very much do enjoy, and I just want to throw some pieces out there to get you into my mindset, as it were. However, I do believe that we have wasted enough time, so with that being said, Fashion Police Squad. So, let's get into the premise of the game, and luckily for me, there's a pretty nifty little introductory cutscene to it all. You are a member of the Fashion Police Squad, or FPS. Oh, I see what you did there, but regardless, you are an officer in the city of Trendopolis, which is under a wave of assault from fashion criminals. With such indomitable crimes such as drab suits, colors too bright, suits that are too loose, saggy pants, and worst of all, socks with sandals. It is up to you, Lieutenant Dez, to get to the root cause of the bad fashion epidemic. And yes, from the last parts of this intro cutscene, you can tell that this game is full of memes. So armed with the punnily named 2-die-4 clothing carbine and the tailor-made portable sewing machine, let's jump into this. If you've played any throwback or retro first-person shooter games, then you should be right at home here. Just run around, shoot the enemies, find the key cards, which are in this case scissors, and find secrets when necessary. Then go through the doors that the scissors lock, or rather insurmountable waist-high velvet ribbon gates, clear some arenas, and then head to the exit that the game designates for you. After going through what I will affectionately refer to as the Referencing Tin commercial district of Trendopolis, your task is to then face off against the boss, Hugo Boss. Regardless, with this out of the way, let's move to 3 areas where I think that I could actually give more details and commentary on: the presentation and the positive and negative aspects of this demo. So, let's start with how this game presents itself. Fashion Police Squad is a pretty linear throwback shooter, which puts it more into Half-Life territory than something like Doom or Duke Nukem. However, even though the game itself is linear, it's sort of a bit more set up like Doom or Duke Nukem, just far more restricted, so it's more like Half-Life wearing the skin of one of those two. The aesthetics of it, though, are actually pretty darn charming. The flavor of the day art-wise is colorful and vibrant, with a lot of well-modeled but low-poly 3D stuff laying everywhere, as well as sprite props, as well as some of the buildings being fashion-flavored references to real-life locations, hence why I've jokingly called this place the Referencing Tin commercial district of Trendopolis. And while I've not been able to extract the audio for use in this video, some of the music is actually pretty good as well. I've always personally thought that games that go for FM as well as the occasional bit of SNES audio tend to hold up a little bit better than games trying to mimic the NES. And that certainly applies here, as the whole 80s vibe you get from it definitely feels at home with all the absurd fashion policing. And a lot of the effects used, such as for the swag armor pickups, as well as enemies like the Neon Bra, also don't feel too out of place. Plus, ultimately, when you're going for an over-the-top humor first-person shooter that's involving puns galore, using a lot of bright, vibrant colors is often the best choice. Same with all of the cheesy music in the game. In terms of aesthetics, I genuinely think that this has done a really good job. Let's go on to gameplay positives, and you know what? We'll start with the bread and butter of any FPS games, the weaponry. So far, I've only been able to use 2 guns and a melee weapon, and since weapon play is even more important thanks to the fact that you can only defeat specific enemies in specific ways, I'm very happy to say that they got the weaponry, in fact, pretty much spot on. Despite the fact that this is a non-violent first-person shooter game, a lot of these can be compared to the analogs of its peers. For example, the 2-die-4 carbine's primary fire feels like a shotgun, and I am pleased to say that it follows the golden rule of any FPS game, especially a throwback one, which is, thy shotgun must be dope. And for those enemies, that 2-chamber paint blaster really gets the job done. The alt-fire, however, is a bit more of a weaponized utility. See, it's used to leach color, either from fire hydrants or from the Neon Bra enemy. And, it does its job, but my only complaint is that it doesn't leach the color off of a Neon Bra, as in it doesn't restore your ammo. Not even a smidge. The tailor-made portable sewing device is also a pretty decent automatic weapon. It feels nice to use against the loose suits. In fact, the only really underwhelming weapon right now is the Belt of Justice. See, the belt right now is bad as a weapon, but amazing as a utility, even though it's right now underutilized, although that's because more of the fact that this is a demo. Swinging around during firefights and firing while swinging around is actually pretty darn exhilarating and easy to get into. However, unless you're fighting a saggy pants, in which case it's perfectly serviceable, the stun mechanic of the belt for all other enemies just really doesn't work very well. It doesn't last long enough. But overall so far, the weapon play is pretty much going in the right direction. Now then, let's get into the areas of this game that I think could be polished or improved. Keep in mind, I do think a lot of this will be improved, as with a lot of demos and early access games, which this solely counts as demo, it often is the case that it's ironed out, either by the time of its full release, or as updates get pushed. Keep in mind, a lot of these are subjective, and some of them are in comparison to the game's peers as well, so you may not find some of these things to be a problem, but this is my own personal feedback. I think the first, and for me personally that is the most glaring, is the fact that aside from the cute little pictures of Desmond committing fashion crimes, there's pretty much nothing to the secrets. And this also ties into other issues of the game as well. See, for those that don't normally play the genre, usually secrets have some pickups. Like in this case, maybe an armor pickup, or one for the underutilized fab meter would do. Speaking of segues, the fab meter itself. See, as you correct fashion crimes, a little meter will build up at the bottom of the screen. When it reaches 100%, you can shortly become invincible and gain the ability to dash towards any enemy and slap the fashion sense into them. The downside is that it's borderline scripted right now when you can use it. During the first and second stages, you will pretty much only be able to use it at the end of stage arena, with on the first stage, it just automatically getting filled up to 100% because of the fact that there's not enough enemies to fill it up. There's also, as well together as this demo is put together, quite a few little, let's just say hiccups. But one I can show and tell is the fact that some of the walls can be jumped right over. It's a thing that speedrunners have very much swiftly picked up on, but let's just say that you can very easily basically soft lock your game like that and require a restart. There are also some stylistic inconsistencies, with some lines being bit crushed and some lines not being bit crushed. If you're wondering what bit crushing is, if you've ever played a Genesis or a DOS game and heard a speech sample through it, that should give you an idea. But if you still don't know what it is, well then let's just say that it will make you want to duke some nukes. However, because I really don't have a good segue into anything, let me just end this part with the, show don't tell bits. All in all, despite some minor rough elements with the demo, I'm rather overall pleased with this. But, as one might have guessed from, the title card for this part of the video, why do this? Why cover this? Let's start with the obvious one first. This is a non-violent FPS game, and a lot of those really don't get a good rap, and usually for very, very, very good reason. Most of them are either advertainment games like a Taco Bell first-person shooter that I was going to make a video on, but I couldn't even get running. Or they're the likes of the old Christian first-person shooters, the ones that shoehorn in Bible stuff into it. You know the types, like Catechumen or Super Noah's Ark 3D. Now, I know a lot of people would ask, why does that even matter? And that does tie into the second reason. This is a good introductory first-person shooter. See, a lot of introductory games for respective genres, for example, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for RPGs, would basically be considered disgustingly and insultingly easy. And a lot of it in this case does come at the expense of the gameplay. However, with this game, Fashion Police Squad, the gameplay is pretty tight so far. So if the quality of the final game matches what we are seeing in the demo now, then there's pretty much two scenarios where a person would absolutely want a product like this. But let me just contextualize those situations, alright? Give me a little bit on this. If somebody wants a shooter to just unwind with, something really easy but fun, then yeah, something like this is perfect already because again, it's good as an introductory shooter. Now, something I've realized from a lot of my friends and acquaintances is the following line of thought. What if you're a parent? I know it sounds preposterous, but think of it this way. A lot of people who did play the likes of Doom and Quake have grown quite a bit older by now. Regardless of if you think the revival will keep going with the vintage and throwback shooter, or if I may make a pun, if you think it's doomed. But if you're a parent trying to get your kid into this stuff, and you're not confident that you can, address stuff like, say...
Your boat gently down to the stream. Oh, I think my dinghy hanging out.
Then a game like this might be perfect for getting your kid into the genre without having to deal with that stuff too soon. And better yet, you'll be giving them something that actually plays well. And thus you'll have a first-person shooter that is enjoyable by all ages. Now, I also do want to mention that these guys have got a Discord server that they're running, so if you want to pop in and maybe give them some love or support the project any, please do pop in there. Much like any background music that is easily obtainable, I will most certainly be linking that in the description as well. So let's end this video with the outro being probably one of the most hilariously over-the-top parts of the game. The Parole Ball.
Gorgeous. Seductive. Classy.